Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Last Edit Podcast, a weekly podcast on film, starring yours truly, Silver Hawkins, and my great friend.
Citizen Sleeve, hello there.
Of course, Last Edit is a podcast where we discuss a film every week, and we each alternate between choosing that film. And this week I have chosen my favorite film of all time, which is Miller's Crossing by Joel and Ethan Coen. It's a film set in around 1929 during Prohibition in America, in an unnamed American city. It was filmed in New Orleans. And it centers around basically two gangs. An Irish gang led by Leo, played by Albert Finney, and an Italian gang led by Johnny Casper, played by John Polito. And they get into a conflict because of a bookkeeper who grifts the Italian gang and the Irish gang's protection of said bookkeeper. And in the middle of this conflict is the main character, played by Gabriel Byrne, called Tom Reagan, who sort of switches allegiance, or nominally switches allegiance, we should probably say, throughout the film. It's heavily inspired by films like Yojimbo and so forth, like that, and Dashiell Hammett novels, like crime noir novels, like the Glass Key especially. And yeah, this film is, to me, a masterpiece. The writing is just so dense. Like, there are probably two lines of superfluous dialogue in the entire film, and both occur near the end when John Polito instructs someone on how to get a proper shave. Other than that, every single bit of dialogue is necessary for plot development or character. It's all really, really, the way it's put together is just really, really compelling. It's this 1920s 30s lingo, and there are so many comebacks that just snap really, really quick. There's a lot of like motor mouth, machine gun dialogue that was also fairly. I mean, we've talked a bit about that in our discussion of His Girl Friday. But yeah, it's the best script I've ever seen for a film. And still, I mean, I'm still amazed just by all the layers that are in the film. So I'm really curious to hear what you thought returning to it.
It's been a long time. I went through a bit of a period of everything Coen, as I think a lot of people did who loved film. But it's probably been a decade or more since I'd watched it. It strikes me how interesting it is from the Irish gangster's point of view, because obviously most iconic gangster films, or even most gangster films, are set in the Italian kind of side of that particular type of film. So to get from the Irish perspective in this kind of way, especially in that era, which you don't often get. There's things like Boondock Saints, which is more modern, but in that particular area, it's quite unusual. I really like the way it starts. There's no fluff, there's no establishing shot, there's no intro. It immediately goes into the two mob bosses.
And their meeting, yeah. It's a question.
Yeah, and their meeting. And straight away you can tell the dialogue is tight and rolls and flows with the lexicon of that era. Some of the lines are absolutely outstanding. Every time someone greets somebody else, it's, "What's the rumpus? I've been having a dappy day." You know, everything is so wonderfully intertwined into the script and used effectively. And as you said, every piece of dialogue moves the plot forward in some way, moves the character's development forward in some way. Barely anything is superfluous. And it's so tight. Everything is so tightly scripted, tightly shot. And
you can't go for a bathroom break during this film.
No. You need to be watching it. It's one of those films that you can't just be messing around your phone or half concentrating on, because you'll miss huge swathes of what's going on in terms of the overall narrative and the little character points that happen in between. I guess we should talk about Tommy Reagan first of all as the central protagonist. It's really funny. After watching this again, the first film I thought of, I think for obvious reasons, but we'll get there later, with The Usual Suspects. It just, as a character, I was like, wow, you kind of get this sense of, you don't know this guy. You think you do.
Yeah.
And throughout the film, there are times when, again, you think you do, and then the complete opposite happens, or he doesn't answer in the way you think he would, or he expects something you as an audience probably don't. Which is very unusual for a central protagonist, because either you are one or the other normally as an audience. You're withheld information to keep pace with the character so you discover it with them, or you are the omnipotent watcher who sees the information first. This just makes you guess.
Yeah.
You're constantly at odds with what's going on and how he's flip-flopping the other characters and their perspectives, and especially what happens later when he does have the issue with Leo and then they go their separate ways for a bit. But obviously we'll get to that. I think the characters are wonderfully well-rounded, and it's interesting to have a protagonist that is not that likeable, but kind of likeable.
Yeah.
He's not even an anti-hero, but he kind of is. It's a very odd character. It's a very different character that I've seen in most of the gangster films. I mean, if you look at Goodfellas, you know,
there's
Ray
no arc,
Liotta's-
no redemption.
Yeah, there's no rise and fall. There's no morality tale here particularly. It's literally how these types of personas work together, or don't.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, let's talk about the music. That opening music track.
Carter
that
Burwell's, his score
continues throughout the film, and is used sparingly at times. And even when there's moments when it becomes more melancholy, they strip back that version of the song to suit the scene.
Yeah.
But it suits the nature of it being about Irish gangsters rather than the Italian gangsters.
It's based on
really
an Irish
fits
folk
it.
song, I think, from what I remember.
Okay. It just sounded like that. So I've heard it before, I think, a few times somewhere. But it really suited the focus of what this film was. And I don't know, it's a beautiful
And of course,
track.
it starts with like the shot of a hat out in the woods getting blown away to the tune of the main theme.
That's very interesting as well, this recurring thing about the hat.
Yeah.
Like, almost being a part of his identity, but also kind of this prophetic thing he keeps seeing in a dream, but then he quashes that with people, with Werner in particular, which is also very, very, very cool, because, again, it's setting up these things, and then it's completely...
There's nothing more foolish than a man chasing his hat.
Chasing his own hat, exactly. Yeah, and the left turns and the right turns, and it's all done mainly through dialogue. There are moments, obviously, there's harsh moments of violence in this film. There are really bombastic sections, but it's the snappy dialogue between central characters that makes this film so really good.
Yeah, and the way the actors deliver on it is just incredible. Like, everyone is really, really good here. Like, John Turturro's really, really good. One of his best performances. Same with Marcia Gay Harden. Probably her best role, I think.
Probably her best, yeah.
And yeah, same with, I think also this is probably Gabriel Byrne's best role as well, as Tom Reagan.
And Albert Finney is as good as Albert Finney ever was.
And John Polito playing out of character, kind of, like, because he's usually sort of typecast as these kind of adorable sort of side characters, almost, like these really meek types. And here's Johnny Casper. He's really sort of this really temperamental, fierce guy. It's really interesting to see him in that role, and he does it really well.
The only performance I think that's even akin to it from John Polito is the store owner in The Crow, and it's not the same, but it's you know, in terms of what he's done before, you're right, he doesn't do many of these roles, and that's the only other one I can think of that comes to mind that's even remotely similar. He's outstanding in it. And his relationship with his son is so funny. Yeah. We should probably mention some plot stuff. We're just going on about little bits here. So, Gabriel Byrne's character, Tom Reagan, is not concierge, but like
He's
not partner even, but
he's
the best friend of Leo's.
friend and advisor to Leo,
Yeah.
who's the gang boss of the Irish gang.
Yeah.
And Leo is seeing Verna, and Verna is the sister to a Jewish bookmaker named Bernie Birnbaum. Now, Bernie Birnbaum has been grifting the Italian gang led by Johnny Casper, and Casper runs a prize fighting ring where he fixes fights. And whenever he lays a bet with Bernie Birnbaum, Bernie then sells the information that he's betting because Bernie knows that Casper fixes his fights. So he sells the information that Casper is making a bet on this fight so that everyone knows, oh, this is going to be a sure thing, and then the odds just tumble. And Casper isn't very happy about that, so he wants to bump Bernie off. And he goes to Leo. This is the opening scene of the film where he goes to Leo to ask his permission to kill Bernie. And Leo denies him because he's seeing Verna, and Verna asks him to protect Bernie. And that's basically where the film then escalates, as war breaks out between the Irish gang and the Italian gang, and Tom gets sort of caught in the middle where he switches over to the Italian gang. And then it's revealed later on that he's actually been serving Leo all along and only sort of infiltrates the Italian gang in order to subvert it and undo it for the sake of Leo.
It's very wonderfully done because obviously nobody in the film knows and the audience doesn't know. So Tom has got this love-hate relationship with Verna and has been seeing Verna behind Leo's back.
Yeah.
And rather than lie about it, rather than subvert it, rather than do what the expectations are there as an audience, he literally just tells Leo, it's like, you don't want to trust her because I've been sleeping with her.
Yeah.
And then we have that scene where Leo beats him, punches him over and over again down that corridor, out of the front of the club, over and over again. And then that's kind of where they part ways.
Yeah, I mean, Leo basically forces his hand there because he goes, I'm going to marry Verna. And at that point, the only way Tom does sort of try and say, just trust me on it, you don't want to marry her. Just trust me. And then Leo goes, no, but I can't, not on this. This is too big. And then Tom realizes that the only way he can really keep Leo from marrying her is by telling her that he and Verna have been seeing each other. Yeah, it's just, I mean, every plot beat is just really, really intricate because there's so much that goes on off camera and is only sort of handled in dialogue. Like Steve Buscemi plays a character called Mink, who's also a bookkeeper, and is in a relationship with Bernie as well, gay relationship. He's also in a relationship with Johnny Casper's chief enforcer, the Dane, which is something a lot of people actually don't pick up on.
No, not at all. There is a few nods to it, and there's a few lines.
Yeah, he's Eddie Dane's boy.
Yeah. It's not subverted in any way, but yeah, I don't think, unless you were really paying attention to the film and understood the dynamics of those characters, you would get it.
Yeah.
Because the Dane is a straight-up cold-hearted killer.
Oh, absolutely.
Who despises anyone who thinks they're too intellectual and over-talks or smart talkers, as he calls them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess for some audience members it might be difficult to link the two, perhaps, but the way he's described and talked about Mink,
it's also
the Dane,
it's also pretty clear.
Terms.
It's also pretty clear that he has women issues, like in the scene where he confronts Verna, and Verna manages to escape, and he goes, "I'm gonna get all of you whores."
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that maybe there are some mother issues or something
Issues.
that sort of drives an underlying hatred of women that maybe has sort of driven him towards preferring men in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, the Dane is one of my favorite villains. Like, he doesn't have a whole lot of scenes in the film, but he dominates every scene he's in. And even when he's just there in the background, he's sort of this looming presence that just sits there scowling at Tom.
He's ominous, isn't he, as a character?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, the first moment he goes to Verna's flat and just the amount of people he just straight up murders.
Yeah.
And then there's that one guy on the floor and he's like, "You want to tell me the truth? If I tell you the truth, you're going to kill me." "Might not." Truth.
No, yeah, no,
In the head.
because if you don't tell me the truth and I find out you're lying, then I won't be able to kill you. So I'm not gonna kill you. And then he tells him the truth, and then he goes, "Yeah, I believe you." Boom.
Just such snappy dialogue and snappy scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's great throughout it, and his demise is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Really is.
always put one in the brain.
Yeah, yeah. I tell all my boys, always put one in the brain. Oh man, it's you know what? It's really difficult to pull these characters off and not make them caricaturish. Really is. Because you could overplay some of these performances so very easily, but the balance that the script and the actors find keeps it level. Doesn't ever heighten it to a point where it seems too silly.
I mean, I just love all the little touches the characters have that you wouldn't see in any other film. Like Leo, the Albert Finney's character, sits behind his desk and drinks through a straw at one point in a bottle. Like, you would never see a gangster boss do that in any other film. But here it's not even commented upon, it's not even remarked upon. It's just a thing he does.
It's like it's a normalcy, yeah.
Yeah. It's just great. And there's, there are a couple of pivotal scenes in the film. Like the most famous scene is probably when Tom initially he gets ousted by Leo because he tells Leo that he's been sleeping with Byrne. And so he calls up Johnny Casper and says, "Oh, I want to join you guys." And then Johnny Casper says, "Okay, but as a good faith, as a show of good faith, you have to give me Bernie Birnbaum." And he does. And so they go and pick up Bernie, and then Tom is told, "You have to kill Bernie." And so he takes Bernie off into the woods, and Bernie then starts really, really begging for his life, which is sort of really John Turturro's sort of pivotal moment in the film. And Tom ends up not pulling the trigger and letting Bernie go. And then telling Casper's guys that, yeah, he killed Bernie. And they go from there. Now, what's interesting for me is every time I watch it, I get another sort of interpretation of Tom's motives. Like, does he, at the moment he spares Bernie, does he already have what happens in the ending planned out and mapped out in his head? Or is him showing mercy a show of humanity for him? Because really, Tom doesn't really show a whole lot of humanity throughout the film. His main sort of outlets for humanity are his relationships with Leo, with Verna, and then his gambling addiction. And the gambling is really interesting because he's this really sort of controlled character who sees all the angles. But then when it comes to gambling, he's really, really bad at it. He loses throughout the film and is in very deep debt with another bookmaker. And yeah, it's just, he's this really interesting sort of cipher that you've mentioned, you can't really get a read on him because he keeps sort of subverting your expectations. Like I love the snappy comebacks he comes up with throughout the film. Like when he sits down, the initial sit down, where Johnny Casper first tries to get Tom Reagan to switch sides, and Tom Reagan rebuffs him. Johnny Casper says to the Dane, "Friendship is a mental state," and then he goes, and then he offers to cover all of Tom's debts with his bookmaker. And then he tells Tom, if you don't take me up on this offer, you're not going to be walking out of here. And then Tom's reply is that going to be a physical or a mental state? Yeah. And there's another scene where Eddie Dane picks him up, and he's been beaten up, and he has a cut lip. And then Eddie Dane asks him, "Where'd you get the fat lip?" "It's an old war wound. It acts up around morons."
It's so quick. It's so quick.
Yes,
isn't it?
absolutely.
Even like the scene you talked about, the first sit down, is the bit after that when the one henchman stays, the bigger guy takes off his hat, takes off his coat, as if he's gonna fully beat up Tom. Tom picks up a chair, smacks him in the face, and he goes, Tom!
Yeah.
And then walks out, and the older guy comes in, the shorter guy, and just beats the living hell out of him.
Yeah.
So, again, the expectations are completely subverted.
Yeah.
And you just don't see it in a film like this very often.
And that initial meeting, that initial sit down that opens the film between Johnny Casper and Leo, where Johnny Casper opens the film by talking about ethics, character, which is sort of really the heart of his character.
All the way through the film.
Really
right to the end.
clearly defined rules of behavior that these are the things we do. We don't cross them. Like, I make a deal, I stand by that deal. I don't double cross. Because once you double cross, where does it end? And when Leo rebuffs him, like the temper tantrum he throws, where I'm sick of coming in here, picking up your scraps, and you giving me the high hat. I'm sick of it, Leo. And then he collects his coat and his hat from Eddie Dane, and he goes, "Use fancy pants. All these."
Oh yes, fancy pants. Classic gangster line. Oh man, I've got to mention the mayor and the police chief, but more so the police chief.
Yeah,
Every so they're changing to whoever's the most powerful at the time. So initially it's Leo, and they're often in the office being bumbling idiots. And then when they change over, they're also being bumbling idiots. Doesn't matter who they're working for. But my favourite bits is when the police chief is just leaning against a car, and Tom is walking by whatever business is being destroyed from whatever mob boss, and he'll say something like, "Police chief, even I don't know what's going on anymore, Tom." And Tom will just be like, "You'll do what you're told. You'll do everything you're told to do." He's so funny. It's just this bumbling, completely mad guy who has no idea what's happening, why things are going on, and he's in charge. And in the background, there's always just chaos happening.
Yeah.
Bullets getting sprayed, glass breaking, people dying, and he's like, It's like, wow, man, it's such a funny character, just a funny little side character. So fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I love this film. I love how dense it is. I love how, I mean, I think I've said this, I didn't love it the first time I saw it because I wasn't able to pay fully attention to it, so I wasn't able to follow it very well. But it's sort of on my second viewing of it, I fell completely in love with it, and it gets better every single time I watch it, and I've watched it like, I don't know, 15, 16 times by now. It's just really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, it is sort of a recommendation with reservations because it's not going to be a movie for everyone because it does require your attention. It does require that you follow every single second. If you're not off during the film, you're going to be lost. But yeah, all the character developments, all the relationships, the way Tom's loyalty sort of apparently seems to shift throughout the film. But then it turns out that he hasn't switched. That it's all been a really, really intricate way of him to move all these pieces into place to where he can get the outcome at the ending where Byrne kills Johnny Casper and then Tom kills Byrne to sort of pin a showdown on Casper and Byrne that they killed each other just outside of his apartment.
We should jump back a little bit because obviously before you mentioned the two gangsters who take Tom to kill Byrne in the woods, and he's told to whack him to prove his loyalty. So he goes out there, the whining happens, he doesn't shoot him, he shows the mercy as you mentioned. But then later on something goes wrong. The Dane is not pleased. He doesn't think he's been killed. He thinks he's pulled one over on them. Tom has.
Yeah, he's the only one who sees through all of Tom's sort of deceit and web of lies.
Smarts. And his manipulation is so good that doesn't matter in the end. But he's the only one who cuts right through it. Maybe Werner to some extent as well, but not quite in the way that the Dane does. So the Dane with the two other henchmen kind of, walk Tom through the woods.
That scene where the Dane is surveilling him, when Werner goes to pay him a visit, and she leaves, and he watches. Now, why would Byrne's sister go visit Tom? And then there's I don't even remember the line that the compatriot in the car says, but he keeps repeating the same line over and over when the Dane keeps asking these questions. And then
Yeah, I
eventually
think I know what you mean.
the Dane just goes,
Man.
"Shut up, man."
So they take him to the woods. They wander around. One of them has a piss against a tree. The other one's singing opera. Very, very casual. Not expecting to find anything. And lo and behold, despite the real Bernie being alive, there is a body. Dressed as Bernie.
Shot in the face.
Shot in the face.
So he's unrecognizable.
And turns out to be Mink.
Yeah.
Who is, I don't know, a guy who maybe won't be missed that much. And so therefore Bernie can use
Except
him
by
as
the
this-
Dane.
Except by the Dane, of course. So, and then you can have this kind of body double situation where now Tom can start trying to manipulate the Italian gangsters, manipulate their boss, and turn him against the Dane. And that's where things really change, I think, in the narrative. And that's also one of the moments, again, when I went, Tom is Kaiser Soze. Tom is Kaiser damn Soze, and he's putting all these pieces in place. But again, as you said before, it draws those questions. Did he already know that if he let Bernie go, he could manipulate him into the ending that we get?
Yeah.
Or was he genuinely being merciful because he saw the act that Bernie was putting on in order to escape from that situation? It's not a film that... It's like Blade Runner.
It doesn't give answers. Yeah, it leaves these answers open.
Exactly. It
for you to give
the audience,
the reading that.
Yeah, it
that
provides
you
you with conscious thinking space, and not many films do that. Most Hollywood films provide you with beats that are force the narrative through causal editing, and that's it. That's what they do. They don't allow you thinking. They don't allow you to really kind of delve into the consequence and thought process and themes of something like this in any way as effectively as something like Miller's Crossing, Blade Runner, Fight Club. These films do. They give you that space to properly understand, or try to understand what's happening, but interpret it yourself and provide your own perspective. That's very unusual, and only the best films, in my opinion, ever do that.
Yeah.
I honestly, I could see it coming. I've been watching films too long to not see it coming at a certain point. So as soon as the second meeting had happened with the Italians, I knew he was going to manipulate them and they were going to die and he was supporting the... But that's only because I've been watching the film for so long. But I still had that Kaiser Soze moment. No, it wasn't him sat at the desk in the police station.
Also, how is he going to pull it off?
Yeah. How is he going to finally kind of round out these sharp edges that he's been working on throughout the film? And that ending, the way he manipulates them. So what's the Italian gangster called again?
Johnny Casper.
So Polito's character, Johnny Casper, is manipulated by Tom into beating the living hell out of the Dane.
Yeah, it takes a shovel right to his face as the
right
devil.
To his face.
While the Dane is basically choking, because the Dane's finally discovered the truth that Bernie is alive, and that Bernie, or he thinks Tom, killed Mink and placed him out in the woods to sort of give him an alibi. And he's there choking Tom to death with his bare hands, saying, "I'm gonna send you to a deep, dark place, and I'm gonna have fun doing it." And then Johnny Casper just smacks him in the face with a shovel. Like
we get those shots prior of Casper just more and more, breathing through his nose, becoming redder, angrier.
And he's had those moments like twice prior in the film where his temper is just really sort of almost had him on the edge. The first is in his sit down with Leo, and the other is in while he sits down with Tom, and Tom first tries to sell him on the idea that the Dane is double crossing him.
Has to put his hand on his shoulder, doesn't he? And he looks down, Johnny Casper, but he does stop.
Yeah,
which is that kind of bubbling tension, bubbling anger. So and then we get the setup for the situation. So he's told Bernie to meet him at his place at 4. He then tells Johnny Casper that Bernie will be there at 4.
That Mink is because Johnny Casper doesn't know the Mink is dead.
Yeah.
Tom Reagan keeps telling him that the Mink that Mink and Eddie Dane have been double crossing him together,
Yeah.
and that Mink is willing to sell out the Dane in order in exchange for protection, and then they go to meet ostensibly to meet the Mink, even though Mink is actually dead, but set up so that he'll actually meet Byrne, and then Byrne ambushes Johnny Casper and kills him, which is when Tom sort of catches up with him and then gets him to hand him the gun and then shoots him and stages the whole thing so it looks like Byrne and Johnny Casper shot each other.
The calmness with which he deals with that situation as well.
Yeah.
So he hears the shot. He's already sent the driver home, so there's no other witnesses. He very, very calmly walks up the stairs and he sees Casper's head. He's already dead. Through the banisters, and the banisters broken across, and then he walks around, and there's Byrne stood there with a gun. And again, he manipulates him into giving him the gun. He then sits down, very shrewdly takes the cash from Casper, takes Casper's gun, very casually shoots him.
Yeah.
Down he goes.
And then Byrne repeats the same line that he spoke when sobbing on his knees in the woods, which is, "Look into your heart." And this time, Reagan doesn't spare him, but he just goes, "What heart?" And then he immediately pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
Which sort of suggests that coldness was always there, and that, to me anyway, and that maybe he did actually just set the whole thing in motion.
Yeah.
Like his act of sparing Byrne set the whole thing in motion. But one thing that makes me question that is his scene with Verna. When Dane confronts Verna, he actually tells her, "Why would you go see the man who put a bullet in your brother?" And of course Verna goes, "What? What did he? No." And then she starts to realize that, no, Tom actually killed him. He lied to me. And she goes to confront Tom and actually shoot him. But she can't actually pull the trigger. And then Tom goes, "It's not easy, is it?"
And that's the other thing, though. It's such a crazy character because, again, it's the expectation would be he would try and calm her down. He would, just from a general character perspective, he would try and calm her down. He would get to put the gun away, and then he would explain the situation. And all he really does is say that, and then Byrne isn't dead, and that's it.
Yeah, and she tells him, "Do you expect me to believe you?" And he goes, "No."
He's so blunt.
Yeah.
So blunt and to the point. There's no wiggle room anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is, again, feeds into this notion of this truly ambiguous character who you struggle to read throughout the entire film.
Like Verna says to him at that point, "That's you all over, Tom. Lies and no heart."
Lies and no heart, yeah.
Well, except, of course, we learned by the end that he does actually have a heart for Leo, and that he's done all of this for Leo and out of friendship to Leo. And of course, the movie ends with Tom saying goodbye to Leo. They meet up at Byrne's funeral. Verna obviously still being not too pleased with Tom at this point. And then Leo and Tom have a conversation about what's happened. And it's also interesting there because Leo actually confronts Tom about, "Did you have this planned out all along?" And Tom's reply is, "I don't know. Do you always plan everything you do?" And Leo says, "Yeah." "Do you always know why you do the things you do?" And Leo says, "Yeah, of course." But you get the sense that there is a certain extent of playing it by ear from Tom, that he's just maybe really, really good at sort of improvising his way out of situations that maybe things aren't as laid out as they might seem to be from their outcomes. It's just a really, really it's so interesting because it raises all these questions that you sit and think about after the movie is over, and that there are no clear answers to it. Like, these answers can change from one viewing to another, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy watching it repeatedly.
Well, the scene you just mentioned, I mean, even that again subverts expectations, because the expectation would be Leo would ask Tom back.
Yeah, and Tom would agree.
Tom would agree and say yes. Happy ending. It's not.
No.
He just says bye.
Yeah, because I think
bye, Leo, and he walks off.
On some level, he feels betrayed by Leo, and that moment when Tom tells Leo, "You need to trust me on this, you can't marry Verna," and Leo says, "No, but I can't." That I feel that's the moment that sort of kind of breaks their friendship, or certainly the dynamic of their friendship.
Well, yeah, he's the advisor, the concierge, and if he's not that, then how can he truly trust Leo? But he's still his family. He still thinks of him as his family.
Yeah.
So, and all this elaborate by the ear setup is for him to save his empire, to save him and his and the people around him and everything that they've worked together for.
Yeah.
Let's mention cinematography briefly as well.
Barry
Bloody
Sonnenfeld.
marvelous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely bloody marvelous. I mean, set design, costume design, the feel of the era is all present and correct. Wonderfully done.
Yeah, I mean the period detail is Leo's office is just like amazing.
And even the bits when they go outside to Miller's Crossing for the job where Byrne gets whacked, and a few other times in the film, whenever the camera pans up to the woods and moves across and then looks back down again, it's almost a break in the prior, more snappier shots and scenes.
Yeah.
You know, and Coen's typical setup of the mini establishing shot where we have the signs outside. Oh, and Barton's Bar. Nice little...
Barton's Arms, yeah, the
Arms,
apartment building where Reagan lives.
Was Fink first?
No, Barton Fink actually came about during their sort of pre-production of Miller's Crossing, because the writing this film was so intense that they actually they sort of wrote themselves into a corner and got writer's block. And so they just left Miller's Crossing and then went to make Barton Fink about a writer who gets writer's block. And then they came back to Miller's Crossing.
I didn't know that. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Writing another film about the thing that you can't write because of that film is genius. Yeah. And yeah, I just thought that was a nod. And maybe it was a nod because that was happening, but just the Barton Arms, I was like, that's cool. That's so cool. Well, yeah,
we also missed what might be the other most iconic scene of the film, which is when Johnny Casper tries to kill Leo and sends two guys to kill him. And he's sitting upstairs in his bed listening to Danny Boy on a gramophone.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys come up. They kill his guards down the stairs, but a lamp knocks over and starts a fire. And then as the two assassins make their way upstairs, Leo sees the smoke coming up through the floorboards, knows something's up, grabs his pistol, manages to get in, crawl underneath the bed just as the assassins break into his room and riddle it with machine gun fire. And then he shoots one in the foot, and as he falls over, he shoots him in the head, and the other guy takes off. And then Leo flees out the window, jumps down on the ground, shoots the assassin as he appears in the window, and then guns down a car as it tries to speed away. And that, like with infinite machine gun ammo, basically up until he's finally emptied by the time the car crashes and the song sort of reaches its crescendo.
Classic Scarface mob boss moment.
Yeah.
You know, I am the guy you do not mess with, and this is the reason why. And I'll tell you what, the amount of bullets that are shot from that Tommy gun into the window is like watching the unedited version of the opening of RoboCop with Ed 209.
Yeah.
I've never seen... I mean, that's some Bonnie and Clyde, Godfather stuff there. He like you said, there's no reload. It just keeps going. And this guy is getting constantly riddled, and they're getting shots from the front and the back. And Leo... it's like something from The Predator, seriously. It's such a manic scene, but again, it captures that notion of that Scarface type gangster.
After he shot everybody up, he goes and picks up the stump cigar he had been smoking in bed, picks it up from his pocket, and then just goes right back where he left off. like his chief henchman says, the old man's still an artist with a Thompson.
An artist with the Thompson, I like that. That could almost be the name of a gangster film. Well, I'll tell you what, I think, like, I hadn't seen this for a decade, like I said, and I'm a big gangster guy. I love everything from the Goodfellas to the Godfather trilogy. I shouldn't say trilogies. Godfather 1 and 2. 3 can go over there on the shelf. Donnie Brasco. You know, there's so many wonderful gangster films out there. I think Goodfellas and Godfather are considered the very best. And I don't think you can argue that Miller's Crossing doesn't belong amongst those other two. Right up there with the very best.
I mean,
because it does.
they're more modern sort of versions, whereas Miller's Crossing is more of a callback to the old style gangster
Prohibition
films,
era, yeah.
like the Roaring Twenties that we talked about last time. It's sort of an homage to those films.
Yeah, and it fits nicely as a counterpoint to the more modern gangster films.
Yeah.
You know, it's, if you look at that triumvirate, as it were, you've got the modern 80s onward, 90s Italian gangsters. You've got the classic Italian gangsters. And then you've got even further back. And they're wonderful. If you ever want to understand gangster culture in a traditional sense, watch those three films. Really do. I mean, I bought Miller's Crossing now. I knew it was fantastic. I just hadn't seen it in such a long time.
Yeah.
I didn't know any specific things apart from the very obvious. But I've watched it twice since we said we were going to do this. And yeah, the amount of depth that each character shows when you peel back the layers, and the ambiguity of not only Tom but other characters as well at times.
Yeah, Verna too.
Werner, you just don't get these types of characters in many big films, and only filmmakers like Joel and Ethan Coen could bring a cast like this together.
Yeah.
And pull off something so wonderfully written with such grace.
It's worth noting that Miller's Crossing is actually the debut for a lot of actors that they would go on to work with extensively. Like Michael Badalucco is debuts in this in a really small part as Johnny Casper's driver. There's
okay.
Steve Buscemi in his first Coen film. There's I forget who else. But yeah, I mean, it's also funny. Peter Stormare, who plays Grimsrud in Fargo, was actually supposed to play the Dane, and the Dane was supposed to be called the Swede. But scheduling conflicts actually ended up making that impossible, which I'm actually thankful for, because J.E. Freeman is so good as the Dane.
He suits that
really
character
intimidating.
perfectly.
Yeah,
And his interactions, especially with Tom, are fantastic throughout the film.
yeah,
The bits of dialogue when they're sat in the back of the taxi or the back of the car. It's so cutting and so kind of hard hitting.
that first time when Johnny Casper sits down and he looks over at Eddie Dane, and he goes, "I hope we can all be friends." And Eddie Dane's only response is nuts.
Nuts. They get that patted down so bloody amazingly. I'm just going to start introducing myself by going, "What's the rumpus?"
Yeah.
Wherever I go, I'm having such a dappy day.
And someone is back tugging you. Are you giving me the hi-hat?
You give me the hat. I should do that. Oh man, I should do that. Or even in supermarkets, I've got the wrong change here. You give me the hi hat. Oh man, that'd be brilliant. I'm going to have to start replacing some of my own dialogue now, just with those things, because they're so cool.
It's funny though. Just before we end, you mentioned cinematography, because the film does sort of work between these different styles, where a lot of it is shot with like sort of traditional slow dolly movements.
Yeah.
But then you have scenes like Leo when he beats up Tom after Tom reveals that he's been sleeping with Verna, that are shot sort of really frenetic, handheld kind of way. Yeah. And then you have undoubtedly the influence of Sam Raimi. You have the Sam Raimi Evil Dead like close up, like the guy just goes like that. In a couple of places,
short zoom right up and in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Sam Raimi is in the film in a very brief cameo as well.
Do you know what? I thought it was, and I didn't check. I know who you mean.
Yeah,
they're outside. The police chief's there again. They've got this mass amount of cops are about to take down this building, and this one detective doesn't get hit, thinks everything's fine, stands up with all this bravado, shoots the one guy who runs out burning, and then he's shot down with Tommy guns, while every other cop is hid behind a car, ready for it. He's like, yeah, this will be fine, and down Sam Raimi goes. I thought it was him. That's brilliant. That's such an amazingly weird cameo. This film's filled with them. It really is. I just think...
Also, that scene where Rock Daniels' body is found with the kid who steals the hairpiece.
Yeah. That's
also another just really small scene. doesn't really affect the plot, but it does so much to sort of just ingrain the believability of the world.
Yeah, and the tone and the atmosphere of everything. You know, that's of course. If a gangster's, we're not living in this is 1929. If a gangster gets shot and put on the street and he's got a toupee and a kid with a dog come over, they're probably going to nick it.
Yeah.
Just these oddities that really, I think that's what this film
that's
does so
the
well.
thing. That's the thing that really sort of troubles Leo after he learns of Rox's death is why did they take his hair?
Yeah. As if it was some kind of statement, when it totally wasn't. It was just some random kid and his dog who sheepishly run away afterwards.
Precisely.
Do you know? I think a lot of filmmakers could learn from a film like this, just in terms of world building, because I think so many filmmakers, especially modern films, their worlds are hollow, and part of the reason they're hollow is because they provide the identity of the world either through exposition or through the visuals. There's not often a sense of depth beyond that, and that's what this film does. There's barely any exposition. Everything is one-on-one, two-on-two dialogue, and that tells you what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
But those little moments we're talking about, those little bits and pieces all add up. And that's what effectively helps you build this world that surrounds the characters of the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Just go and watch it. There's no point in... This is a top-class, wonderfully made, exceptional gangster movie. And it's not just gangster movie, just movie.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And like I said, it made me think of Usual Suspects. At times, some of its shots made me think of Shawshank Redemption, oddly enough. I don't know why. Maybe it's just that caliber and quality of film and the performances. But that level of cinema is hard to achieve, and this has got it in abundance. Really.
You may have to watch it more than once, though. So prepare for that.
Multiple watchings, definitely. But if you're into multi-layered, really detailed films with a whole load of depth, this is an amazing one to watch. And it's the kind of film I can watch probably once every couple of months and find something new, which again is unusual. Right, well, that has been The Miller's Crossing, and I think that is just about going to bring to a close our little triumvirate of gangster films, at least for now.
Yeah.
We'll come back at some point, no doubt. So, next week, I thought long and hard about this. For a little while there, I thought maybe Blood Simple, the first Coen Brothers film.
Right.
But I didn't choose that. Partly because it's really bloody difficult to get hold of. You can't even rent it on Amazon.
I have it on DVD, thankfully.
See, I love that film. But I went a little bit different. It's again, the first film from a filmmaker who is now exceptionally well known. And when it came out in 1994, it kind of blew me away a bit. And what came after that from him has been quite exceptional. So I'm talking about Shallow Grave. It's a bit obscure in that most people who know Danny Boyle probably haven't seen it, or might not have seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
It stars Christopher Eccleston, who'd been in some stuff before, but this really gave him rise. Kerry Fox as well. And it was Ewan McGregor's first proper starring film role. And I'm not going to spoil anything about it other than to say it's about three flatmates who are looking for a fourth flatmate. There is a dead body and there is a bag of money. That's it.
We'll look forward to it. Absolutely.
Rentable on Amazon for anyone who wants to watch it prior to the podcast. It's not very expensive either, I don't think, because it's such an old film. So, Shallow Grave, 1994, shall be our film for next week.
That sounds great. Until then, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch Miller's Crossing. And take care.
Have a good week, everyone.